Dear friends, grace to you and peace from our God who seeks and saves the lost. Amen. Before I head into the sermon itself, I want to share a sentiment that will be pertinent in the sermon in a moment. It is from the phrase, better late than never. You'll see in a few moments that the story of Zaccheus includes an element of better late than never. I was doing a training recently for community clergy on skills for providing pastoral care for people who have suffered significant loss and trauma. There's a lot of that happening these days. One pastor asked a question during this training. He said, I recently learned that a member of my congregation endured a really painful loss, but nobody told me about it. I just learned about it, but the actual loss happened months ago. Is it too late for me to acknowledge it? He asked, I wonder if I were to acknowledge it now, wouldn't it seem like I have done that too late? So, the correct answer in the field of emergency skills for pastoral care and this sort of thing is this: better late than never. You just say, hey, I'm reaching out to you because I just learned about a really painful loss in your life. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I didn't learn about this sooner, but as soon as I did learn about it, I wanted to express my support and my deepest condolences to you. Better late than never. Better late than never is a theme in this Bible story from today. And as we continue in this sermon series entitled Unraveled, today we meet Zaccheus. As opposed to last week's story about Rizpah, the Bible character that really never gets talked about in the regular Sunday Bible lectionary, the story of Zaccheus is one that actually does appear. So you may already know this story and have heard it before, but why is it included in this series entitled Unraveled? How was Zaccheus' life unraveled? Well, to see how Zaccheus' life was unraveling, we have to probe a little into what these times were like and how Zaccheus specifically fit into them. The ancient Israel of Jesus' time had a very conflicted history. We have in the Bible the stories of how after leaving slavery in Egypt, the Israelites had a long sojourn of moving this way or that and eventually settling in. They built what would become a great kingdom with kings like David and Solomon. After that, well, things kind of went downhill. The ancient Israelites got conquered over and over by other world powers. The Babylonians, the Persians, the Greeks. Now, there were brief periods in between being conquered when the ancient Israelites won back independence, such as during the time of the Maccabees. That's when the miracle happened where the repurification of the temple happened, where 1 day's worth of oil lasted for 8 days. That's the basis for the celebration today of Hanukkah. But these periods of independence were brief. And after the Greeks came the Romans. The Roman Empire absorbed ancient Israel about 60 years before the time of Jesus. Now, the people of ancient Israel in Jesus' time, they yearned to be free of the Romans, just as they yearned to be free of the Greeks and the Persians and the Babylonians and the Egyptians. Yet here they were. Some people organized uprisings against the Romans, and some people just decided, well, let's just go along with it. Zaccheus was someone who decided, let's just go along with it. Because his job was tax collector. Not even just tax collector, it was chief tax collector. So for an ancient Israelite like Zaccheus to collect taxes on behalf of the Romans was considered to be something that most Israelites would call a collaborator with the Romans against your own people. Israelites who sided with the Romans and worked for them and helped them, like Zaccheus, were hated, detested, and considered to be the worst kind of sinner. Now, be all that as it may, Zaccheus, the Bible tells us, had gotten rich off of this arrangement. And at some point, he must have been really comfortable with it because he not only did it, he did it so well that they made him the chief tax collector, the boss of all of the other Israelites, similarly collaborating with the Romans. The Romans must have trusted him. So in the middle of all this, with Zaccheus rich off his tax collecting, with a big job as boss of the other tax collectors, Zaccheus goes and decides that he has to climb a tree to see Jesus. Why did he do it? He'd lived his whole life benefiting off of an unjust system. He'd spent his whole life getting rich off the backs of other people. Why did he do it? Well, maybe better late than never. We'll never know maybe exactly what was going on in Zaccheus' mind about why he did it, but it seems that for him to do that, his life must have been unraveling. Jesus seemed to represent the opposite of how Zaccheus had lived his life. Jesus went around saying things like, "Blessed are the poor," in this Gospel of Luke, and "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." It might have been that phrase that Jesus said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God," that maybe that began to unravel Zaccheus. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. You see, Zaccheus' name, Zaccheus, in Hebrew means a pure person, a blameless one. Maybe the deep down realization that his life, his lifestyle, his livelihood were built on not being pure and blameless just sort of caught up with him. So when he heard Jesus was going to be coming around, he wanted to go see him. But Jesus took that one step further. Jesus invited Zaccheus in. So, you've heard the phrase, better late than never. I think you've also heard the phrase, meet me halfway, right? Meet me halfway. That's a common idea between two people if you have a disagreement or if you're negotiating something, that people meet in the middle. That's a good outcome, right? Yeah. God, though, doesn't meet us in the middle. God doesn't. The story of Zaccheus shows that God doesn't meet us in the middle. Instead, when we take the tiniest step in God's direction, like Zaccheus did, God meets us right there. The reason? Because God was in fact there all along. Our tiniest step in God's direction doesn't bring God flying our way. Our tiniest step in God's direction wakes us up to God's presence right there all along. So Zaccheus climbed the tree hoping to just see this Jesus. Instead, he got Jesus coming to his house, saying, "Today, salvation has come to this house, for I have come to seek out and to save the lost." The good news for us is that it's always better late than never with God, and that God never meets us halfway. God meets us right where we are because God was there all along. So let's contemplate in our own lives. Where are we sometimes unraveling? Where are we sometimes feeling the actual tapestry and the construction of our lives is kind of falling apart? Wherever that is, whatever is happening, we can contemplate in our minds, better late than never. I can make change. I can make a movement to do something, one little thing, to maybe fix a wrong I've done, to maybe go down a different path than one I've been going on. And whenever we decide that better late than never, when we make that tiniest little move towards God, God will be right there, not because God comes flying our way, but because God was there all along. Amen.